welcome to everyone. It's lovely to see you all here tonight, and we really appreciate you giving up your time to spend some time with us in this meeting. A special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. I hope you find it helpful, and we really want to know how you are finding it, because this whole process is going to be driven by you and by lots of consultations. So please don't hold back and let us know. A very warm welcome to those of you who are joining us from another country. I know we have people here from Peru, from the Caribbean, and hopefully joining us from Ukraine as well. We are going to be focusing on the British context, the UK context here, but we hope that what we have to share will be relevant and a useful model for elsewhere as well. We find we're always learning from other professions in other countries. We find that immensely useful in getting to this point, and so we hope that will also be the case for you. And finally, a very special welcome to the people who've been attending since the very beginning of our Forum for Professional Development. It's really nice that you've been able to stick with us. So just jump in the chat and let us know if this is your first time or what you're hoping to learn from this, where you're calling in from. If you feel like it, don't feel obliged. We will have chance to break out and speak in a little bit more of a focused way later on, because we want to hear your reactions and concerns and thoughts about all of this, and hopefully your excitement and questions and suggestions. But we will try to take note of everything that people share in whatever mode, and do feel free to get in touch afterwards as well. We really want to hear from you. So just a little recap for everyone who's maybe new to this, or maybe has been attending for a long time and forgotten. The background is that Trellis has always perceived our work as being that of a surrogate or professional infrastructure. We always noted that the lack of recognition, and the fact that therapeutic gardening isn't a formed or fully formed and recognised profession, but a sort of emerging field, was the source of a lot of the barriers and problems and gaps we recognised. And so we always designed our support services to try to overcome these problems. And so we saw ourselves as a kind of stepping stone to this professional association. And therefore, over the years, we have made various plans and collaborations, and embarked on research to try and create a professional association, and also the requisite training and accreditation that might go with that, because we can't sort of set standards without setting a path or a ladder for people to get to those standards. And then finally, in 2021, especially during our first ever international seminar series, we heard the calls for this professional recognition from practitioners getting ever louder, and we knew we had to step up and really try and make it work this time. And so we began our forum for professional development, and some of you here were members of that forum, and we met maybe quarterly or every couple of months, and began making plans about what this professional association could look like, what it must do, what it mustn't do. And we began to create a code of conduct and look at other professions and organisations and how they had begun to take these same steps, maybe in the past or at the same time as us. And we, around that time, I invited Emma Martindale to come and work for us. She had been a field worker with Trellis for a long time, and then she came back on board and began working with me to help really push this forward, because I really didn't have enough time to give to it. And working together, Emma unearthed the Professional Standards Authority, and that seemed to be a really good model, and we'll talk more about that in a while. And then the forum members began to volunteer to do a little bit more work to try and push things forward a little bit faster. And Christina, who's also here, and Rachel were two of the people who began to do that, and actually begin to draft a code of conduct and take some steps towards really making things happen. And then we decided to bring Christina on board too, to help us with that process, and begin to create papers documenting what might be the impact of having a professional body. How will it affect people? What do we need to think about in more detail? And then, of course, we had some meetings with the Professional Standards Authority and with Thrive, and happily we made an agreement with Thrive to do this together, because by pooling our resources in this field, we could do so much more than working in isolation. So for a long time now, we've been working together, and this is the culmination now of well, not the culmination, it's really just the start, but this is where we've got to. And so, and then slightly in I suppose the most recent chapter is a slightly less obvious step. We at Trellis, we decided to inaugurate World Therapeutic Horticulture Day in May, because we felt that without recognition, without awareness, there could be recognition with no recognition. So unless people knew about this profession and these people out there who are doing these things, there could be no recognition. And so that was a kind of fun way to try and boost recognition of therapeutic horticulture. And I hope some of you took part and maybe will want to get involved in organising next year's event, because we mean to make it a permanent fixture. So that's probably enough of the backstory. I'd like to hand over to Catherine Ruster from Thrive now to tell us a little bit more about the real need for professional association. Catherine.
Going to talk just a little bit to give a wider context as to why we think an association is needed and why we think it's needed now, and how it is being supported by and is supporting other areas of work. So this slide here is just an attempt to summarise what we all know about why people engaging with STH is a good thing to happen. It's a holistic intervention. It can benefit the whole person, but it can also have positive impacts beyond the person as well. And I think it's important that we recognise those features of STH. So over recent years, we have seen a real increase in awareness of the value of spending time in nature and the value of gardening, particularly for health and well-being. It was only 2016 that Natural England did their report reviewing nature-based interventions for mental health, which started to sort of put together recommendations around what the sector and the health sector need to do to come together to make this a reality. But really, it was COVID and the lockdowns that really started to gather a bit more momentum behind all of this, and started certainly raising the more sort of public profile of the value of gardens and nature. And the Green Social Prescribing pilot projects, which kicked off just before COVID, were doing a really good job and had a huge potential to vastly increase demand and to help many people with defined need to connect to appropriate community-based provisions. So a lot of sort of groundswell of momentum and awareness and things. So we're riding a bit of a crest of a wave, but that's a bit of a double-sided sword, because it's also not distinguishing between a therapeutic intervention that is properly structured and facilitated, as opposed to just getting out in nature. So that's another area that we're really keen to make sure that we're stressing when we're talking to people about this. So thinking about the problem that sits out there. So why do we not have loads of STH provision being commissioned for anybody that needs it wherever they live in the country? That's clearly not what we've got at the moment. And basically, we are living in an imperfect world. We have quite an imperfect health and well-being system. Some of you may say it's completely broken. And depending on where you sit in the system, you will have a good view of different elements of that system. So this slide here is an attempt to sort of summarise what we understand to be the main problems, taking a system-wide view. So we've got people who commission services working in systems that lack funding, that are complex, are constantly changing. The system and the staff are under extreme pressure. We've got referral pathways that rely on local knowledge and local relationships, and there's too few people who know what is available, but also what is appropriate. There is a certain element of an image problem. Some people will see gardening as a leisure activity for the wealthy. Other people will see it purely as menial work done by people in poverty. Not many people are seeing gardening as a therapeutic intervention that can really help with their health and well-being. So there's a public understanding problem there as well to tackle. Thinking about within our own practices, whilst we all strive to deliver positive outcomes and offer a good standard of care and health support to our clients, There aren't any nationally agreed or universal standards of practice, training requirements, or outcome measurement frameworks. And because our organisations have grown organically, usually around a pocket of need or around the dedication of a few passionate individuals, what we've got is a lot of small-scale local organisations, which on the one hand is part of our strengths because we're properly rooted in our local communities and local needs, but it makes it really difficult for a large system like the NHS and the integrated care systems to understand us and engage with us. And we rely really heavily on fundraisers and volunteers just to keep things moving. So it's very much an imperfect system. And if we're going to really see STH reach its potential, we are talking about needing changes at a system level, which is quite a difficult thing to get your head around. But we believe it can be done, and this slide is an attempt to sort of describe what that vision for the future could look like. If we really can get to a point where STH services are available wherever you live, and there's a thriving sector supplying those services behind it. And we're already working towards elements of this. For the last 18 months, Fiona and I have been part of a therapeutic horticulture stakeholder group, which Natural England brought together initially to look at what needs to happen to scale up STH. So there is that national level organisation group of people looking at that. Coming out of that, Essex University have done some really good research in helping to understand the barriers to people commissioning STH for mental health, and hope that that will give us some clearer insights into what we need to do to help improve the commissioning systems and understanding. We're developing a framework which helps to position different types of gardening activity aligned to different people's mental health needs, so that we're getting that match between need and provision. And we hope that that will assist with both the commissioning and the referral processes. And coming up soon, there's a conference going to be running on scaling up green therapies. That's taking place on the 9th of October at Tuppenny Barn in Chichester. And Dr. Richard Claxton has been very instrumental in getting that up and running. So I can add to the chat a link to their event. They're nearly fully booked, but if you are interested, there are still some places available on that. I think that'd be an interesting day's conference. So what else do we need to see going on? We are making progress in different areas of this. There's a Green Care Quality Mark now for provider standards. That was developed by Social Farms and Gardens as a genesis from the original Care Farming Code of Practice, which has been extended to take in a wider context. As Fiona mentioned, we had World Therapeutic Horticulture Day this year, which helped to establish the credibility of the profession as well as create a network for practitioners, and we hope we can build on that. And then there's the work that we're talking about here today, the professional body and setting professional standards. And what we want to get to is a point where the value of a trained STH practitioner to ensure those positive outcomes is properly understood and recognised, and that STH is placed on an equal footing with other allied healthcare professions. So that's the way in which we're then going to attract investment into our profession, create career pathways for people to work through it. And that's really what we're trying to get to. And Christina and Emma are going to take you through more of the detail of the nuts and bolts of what that actually looks like as a profession.
As Catherine and Fiona mentioned, we wanted to give you a bit more information about this new UK Association for Social and Therapeutic Horticulture, and also the potential register, well, the register that we hope to set up. So Fiona mentioned me. I work for Trellis 2 days a week as a training and standards officer, and I work freelance the rest of the time as a gardener and a therapeutic gardener. And I'll let Christina introduce herself as well.
Ah, you mean now? Right, sorry, yes, hi. I've done the diploma in STH a few years ago. I met some really wonderful people, and since then I've been working partly as an STH practitioner, but more recently as a community gardener, and also I run the Reading Green Wellbeing Network.
Thanks, Christina. So I'll be talking first, and then we'll come back to Christina later on. So I think Fiona's kind of covered this in part, but we wanted to just give you a bit of a sort of brief summary of the work we have been doing so far, more recently, in terms of thinking about the creation of a register. If you have any questions about anything that we are talking about, please feel free to pop them in the chat, and we'll try to come back to you either today, or if we run out of time, then we will get back to you as soon as we can. So in terms of where we started, or where I started when I got involved, I started to have a look at other professional registers and felt that that would be a good start in terms of thinking about what we might want to do as a large group of professionals. So I looked at the regulating bodies for other professions, so for social workers, nurses, physios, OTs, and any other sort of registers I could find, really, and did a lot of reading to look at their registers and how they were set up. And through doing all of that, I came across the Professional Standards Authority. I'll talk a wee bit more about the Professional Standards Authority in the next slide, and how we might want to work with them. So alongside doing that, I also began to look at registers that had been accredited by the Professional Standards Authority. So to see what their experience had been like going through the Professional Standards Authority application process, and just to kind of hear about any pitfalls that they had experienced or any benefits. So I spoke to a few different organisations that had registers or were in the process of setting up registers, such as the British Association for Sports Rehabilitators, the Institute of Case Managers, and a few others. And that kind of helped us to learn more about what it might look like to submit an application to the PSA, Professional Standards Authority, and also gave us a better idea of all the sort of mammoth amount of work that was going to be needed to set up this new body in terms of all of its policies and procedures, but also hearing about the benefits from the people that had set up these registers, for the people who joined, in terms of CPD and lots of other benefits for them as well as obviously benefits for the public. So while we were doing all that work, and Trellis and Thrive have been speaking to people all through this process and before, but it felt like it was important to set up a sort of more formal professional development forum, and that's how these meetings came about, so that we could ask for your views and make sure that we were consulting all the way through. So as Fiona mentioned, we really appreciate that you're here, and we will be continuing to have these meetings and asking you your views all the way through this process. So just to give a quick summary of the PSA. So kind of in summary of why we feel that this is the right kind of way to go. When I looked at the registers that exist in the UK already, so kind of historical registers such as doctors, social workers, nurses, they all have to join a mandatory register as part of working in those fields. But the process now is that new registers they aren't mandatory, they're set up in more of a voluntary sort of capacity, unless there's a high risk to service users or patients. So it's kind of suggested that most, if not all, new accredited registers should be set up through the Professional Standards Authority. So when we spoke more with them, so you do the application, but they kind of support you through the process, but they also will look really in-depthly at all of the sort of internal policies and procedures of this new body. So there's lots of work to be done, and Christina will cover more around the work that we need to do to set up the register and get through the PSA accreditation processes. I also thought it might be helpful for you to see a list of the types of organisations that have already gone through the PSA accreditation process. So I'm not going to read them all out, and we'll make sure that you can get a copy of these slides later on, but there's quite a variety from all sorts of different backgrounds and areas of work. And it might be that we want to speak to more of them, but that just gives you an idea of the types of people that are out there already. And so in terms of setting up this new association, there needs to be a kind of overarching purpose, which hopefully we're all clear on from Fiona and Catherine's discussions at the beginning. But at the moment, and this is a draft, as is everything for this application and for the setting up of this body at the moment, that's the kind of purpose that we're using at the moment. And I just thought it might be helpful for you to see that. And also, these are the kind of initial strategic aims of the association. So they would be to help us to set up and uphold standards and to have a register, to encourage professional practitioners through giving access to CPD and high quality training, and to encourage people from all sorts of backgrounds to be able to get into this area of work, and also to be able to help the wider public, government, commissioners, policymakers understand the benefits of this area of work.
This is the process to get accredited if you look at it from the PSA's point of view, and we are at stage 3. And you can see that after that, the PSA itself conducts consultation. They take the view that that is a very important part of what they do, and consultation by us also is a very important part of the whole process. Stage 3, it says complete an application form, innocuous sounding words. Standard 1 or the whole application. Just for information, the fee for applying just for Standard 1 is £1,352. The fee for applying for the whole thing is £14,350, and then there's an annual fee after that to maintain accreditation. Could I have the next slide, please, Emma? Standard 1 is an initial hurdle. So you can see that that's the reason for the row of stars between 1 and the rest. What the PSA wants to know is STH any good for people, and can you evidence that? And what are the risks to the public? It's not just a matter of having a register which says all the people on this register are competent, trustworthy professionals. By accrediting a register, the PSA is saying that, and also that the service these professionals offer is a health promoting service. So after this hurdle of Standard 1 has been cleared, Standards 2 to 9 are applied for in one application, and they're all concerned with demonstrating that we can manage a register properly and fairly. The next slide, please, Emma. The details of the PSA standards all interrelate. So, for example, information relating to equality, diversity and inclusion, which is number 9, feeds into standards 1, 2, 4 and 5 at least. For example, the PSA might ask, does the application process for an STH professional to join the register discriminate unfairly against a group of people? That question clearly relates to management of the register, to standards for registrants, particularly the paths to entry and accreditation of prior learning, and the standard about equality, diversity and inclusion, but it also relates to education and training and communications and engagement. For example, in how accessible the whole process of application is for a professional. So answering those questions affects the whole process set up to run a register, and also the content of, say, standards of practice, code of practice. So the documents, policies and procedures needed to establish a professional body are best worked out in tandem rather than one after the other. Could I have the next slide, please, Emma? So how do we make progress where we have to demonstrate these features about a register before we have an accredited register? And we think the answer is by creating a shadow voluntary register. This will show the PSA, A, that there are professionals out here, and B, that we can manage a register professionally. And the public, oh, could you go back to the slide before, please? Thanks. The public face of a register could look like this. As well as the person's name and register number, it would show general location, such as Bristol, and also an area of specialism, such as people with dementia, if appropriate. One requirement is that if there is an investigation or sanction in place, then that should show up on the register or be otherwise easily accessible to the public too. So that's the reason for the final column. It's worth noting what's not on the public face of the register. Personal contact details or other personal information does not show, such as date of birth or disability. The detail about a person's experience and qualifications or demographic information about them is also not on the face of the register, but that information is going to be needed for the register to be pulled together. Could I have the next slide, please, Emma? Thank you. So here's the example from the British Association of Sport Rehabilitators. I know it's not very clear, it's actually part of the Smith page. There are obviously several examples of these kinds of registers already in existence, as Emma mentioned, and choosing the best layout for our own professional register will involve consultation, of course. Accessibility for the public is an important feature, and so is accuracy. For a register to be accurate, there have obviously to be consistent, fair standards set for applicants to be admitted and turned away, and workable procedures behind that. So an online process would be set up with a group to check applications, and also a route for an applicant to take if the application is unsuccessful. So it might be a minor hitch which can be easily corrected, or maybe there's a fundamental problem with somebody's application, in which case some sort of appeal process is needed. We will need to demonstrate the integrity of the register, possibly by random audits, and of course via policies and processes for handling a complaint about a person on the register. And around all of that, we want high quality communications and monitoring. The next slide, please, Emma. So to build this voluntary register, each applicant will need to provide personal details, including about their years of experience and qualifications, and those will likely be from a range of fields. And it's jumped about, thank you, because we all know that we've come to STH from a range of health and horticultural backgrounds. And the information provided also needs to include stuff about relevant to protected characteristics under the equalities legislation. The information will be collected and processed in a GDPR compliant way. Trellis already does this, of course, and so Trellis could hold this shadow register until there's a standalone independent body to manage it. Ideally, when you apply to be on the register, you won't have to provide all the same information again at a later stage when things move over to an independent body, but we can't promise that right now. We will need people to test any application form that's created before asking people to dive in and complete it. To have the last slide, please, Emma. And this is a roundup slide, bringing together a lot of the elements which are going to be needed, not necessarily all. So in the blue box, we've got the communications elements, both internally amongst ourselves and externally. In the grey box, we have what you might call the substantive elements, the defining features, levels, the standards, entry paths, etc. In the green box, we've got elements relating specifically to the PSA application. And in the pale orange box, we've got the elements around a register and a body, which I've just been talking about, and also the mention of subscription or membership fees. And in the brighter orange box across the bottom, we have the issue of funding. Naturally, the more money there is to support the work, the quicker it can happen. And there is a funding bid in process, so fingers crossed on that. If you know of any potential suitable sources of funding for this kind of work, then please let Catherine or Fiona know. And I think we're likely to be looking for volunteers to be on working groups to help move these different elements forward. So thank you for listening,